Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about the ridiculous charade being played out over Russian oil and how Russia, working with India and Turkey, continues to supply the US, UK and EU with oil and oil products. Over 2.5 years ago, the US and its allies introduced sanctions against Russian oil and petroleum products exports. These sanctions were the total ban on the importation by these countries of any Russian oil or petrol, diesel or other petroleum-based products. Now, this ban was all the EU member states plus the UK and the US, and at the time of the ban, the US was actually buying a large quantity of Russian oil for refining, as Russia's Urals crude is actually better for refining than West Texas Intermediate, the predominant brand of oil produced in the US. Now, most of the EU countries were also dependent on Russian oil supplies, so they rushed out to find other suppliers where they could. Now it's transpired that despite the prohibition of imports of oil and oil products, the Russian fuel is actively being supplied to European markets, exploiting the various loopholes in the sanctions. Now, allegedly, Western companies have paid Russia over $2 billion of the last 6 months alone. And that's according to the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air and the Centre for the Study of Democracy. How they get involved in oil, I don't know. So how is it possible that Russia is able to circumvent all the sanctions imposed on them? Well, the analysis of it reveals that the increase in petrol and diesel supplies was the result of the operations of 3 major oil refineries in Turkey. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website, SCOBRICSInsight.com, to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen on the right hand side. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm actually all thanking you now just for watching, because I do appreciate that. Now, one of the refineries, which is the Azerbaijani-owned Starajian, relies totally on Russian crude, well, 98% actually, according to the report's authors. Approximately 73% of the crude comes from the sanctioned energy company Russia's Lukoil. However, nearly 9 out of 10 barrels of their output are destined for export to the West as opposed to the Turkish domestic market. So Russian oil is supplied to Turkish refineries and the finished products are then sent to the West. So Turkey and India are effectively acting as middlemen between Russia and the EU and making a nice profit out of the trade. Now, Political magazine highlights the potential loopholes in the sanctions legislation. They said despite the G7's long-standing restrictions on Russian oil, the fuel can be purchased after refining in Turkey or India. I mean, after all, according to the EU rules, there's no sanctions on Turkey or India or any restrictions on where Turkey or India can buy their oil from. Plus, once the oil is refined, you can't tell if it came from Russia or anywhere else. Now, despite the constant and repeated bleatings by the Kiev cokehead in Ukraine that Western companies have to cease commercial operations with any countries still dealing with Russia, most companies are quite happy to take advantage of this opportunity to make money, despite his futile bleatings and protests. I mean, in 2023, CRA calculates that indicate that Russian supply of oil to Turkey and then on to Western markets generates about $3 billion in revenue for Russia. However, that estimate is probably conservative and the actual figure is probably much higher, as Ankara has increased its purchases from Russia by 105%, while exports to the EU have gone up by 107%. Should also be noted that not all fuel cargoes arriving in the EU from Turkey are Russian, but given the level of increase, it's certainly a large amount. Now, the refineries in question have a capacity to process around 1 million barrels of crude oil per day. So it seems probable that some fuel not originating from Russia is also being resold, maybe from Azerbaijan, given that they own the Starajian refinery. However, An analysis of the geographic location of the ports combined with the import-export data indicates that the significant volumes of Russian oil are just simply repackaged and shipped on without even being refined, according to the CREA analyst. Also, it's not just Turkey it's in this lucrative trade, and it's not the sole transit point for Russian oil. I mean, India is a major player in the import of Russian oil. In 2023, the EU saw a 115% increase in imports from India. Plus, immediately following the embargo, the British, and Starmer and his chums began purchasing products from the Yamajar oil refinery, which just happens to be the largest in the world on the west coast of India. Subsequently, 2 other refineries were added to the portfolio, Vadanar and New Mangalore. Now, in London, they imported almost 5.2 million barrels of oil products from India that were of definite Russian origin, according to the data from the non-government organisation Global Witness. I mean, the majority of the imports, 4.6 million barrels, were actually jet fuel, so it's hardly surprising, though India has become the largest importer of Russian oil and continues to do so, simply because its Energy Minister, Shri Hardeep Puri, says it's highly profitable for India to buy oil from fellow BRICS member Russia, and if India didn't buy it and refine it, there'd be problems with supply in the global market. Germany has also developed this supply channel. According to the German Federal Statistics Office, the volume of petroleum products imported from India in January to July 2023 was 12 times higher than the same period in 2021. The primary product the Germans buy is gas oil, which is used in the production of diesel fuel. In 2022, the expenditure reached 451 million euros, and that's a 1,000% increase compared with 2021. In total, 20 out of the 27 EU countries purchased petroleum products from India or Turkey in 2023. Leading purchasers were the Netherlands 24%, France 23%, Romania, Italy and Spain 11% each. The primary beneficiaries are obviously all Indian and Turkish refineries. As an illustration, 49% of the Navara energy in India is owned by the Russian oil giant Rosneft. So obviously it's offering attractive prices to India. It's estimated that Turkey and India may save about $15 a barrel on Russian oil from the market rate, which makes it highly lucrative for themselves and for Russia. I mean, Kepler, the energy company, indicates that average 1.7.5 million barrels of crude oil were delivered to India from Russia in 2023, and that's a 140% increase compared to 2022. Plus, Delhi has overtaken Beijing as the primary export destination for Russian oil, accounting for 44% of its exports this year. I mean, the daily volume is now up to 2.07 barrels, and Turkey saw a 34% increase in 2023 and a further rise this year. However, for consumers in Europe, the savings as a result of the West's purchase of cheap sanction fuel are not reflected in their costs. I mean, the EU pays Turkey 10% less than it paid Saudi Arabia, but this pricing strategy only benefits the companies and the dealers who are buying it, according to Vamibhav Raghuhadan, who's the centre at the Research for Energy and Clean Air. Now, in May 2023, the EU Foreign Minister Joseph Borrell acknowledged that the banned fuel has been entering the West through the back door. He says, "We're not directly purchasing Russian oil, but rather than diesel that's obtained through the further refining process from other sources. And that allows us to circumvent our own sanctions," he said. Nevertheless, the West continues to cite a lack of awareness regarding the fuel's true origin. This has prompted Politico magazine to express its discontent. In a statement last year, Oleg Ustenko, an economic aide to the Ukrainian Kiev cokehead Zelensky, called for a ban on oil products from intermediaries such as Turkey, China and India. Now, it's evident that the EU is not prepared to do this, and according with the established regulations, the use of mixed fuel is subject to sanctions, with the severity of those sanctions dependent on the proportion of the Russian components. But how are they actually going to work it out? Now, the determination of whether the raw material has undergone significant transportation is a completely new product is crucial. However, in practice, the document attesting the origin of the cargo, the so-called certificate of origin, is subject to examination. I mean, it's easy to classify the fuel as non-Russian just by pushing that small percentage in. I mean, Moscow's export energy revenues have remained remarkably stable, and that's over the past 18 months, and that's despite the fluctuations in price. I mean, the current account surplus, that's a positive balance for the period January to July. The figure was nearly 40 billion, which is about 1.5 times more than the same period in 2023, and that speaks for itself. So it appears that the sanctions battle has been lost by the West and those who imposed them. So yet again, the EU seems to shoot itself in both feet, and its boomerang continues to fly backwards towards it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, you can help me fund the channel and the website SCOBRICSinsight.com by clicking the thanks button and making a small donation. Don't forget the comments section. Love to get your comments, love to read them, love to respond to them. So until then, see you again soon.